This afternoon live, I'm Simon McCoy. There's nothing more the crew could have done to save their plane. That's the verdict of the first official report into the crash of a Boeing 737 MAX-8 jet in Ethiopia last month. In the horrifying final moments of Flight 302 from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, the pilots followed correct procedures, but the aircraft kept going into a nosedive before it crashed, killing all 157 people on board. Boeing has now grounded all 737 MAX aircraft since the disaster and an earlier crash in Indonesia last year. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Burridge.
2 crashes in 5 months and 346 people dead. Boeing's reputation is on the line after more evidence today that a new anti-stall system on the 737 MAX-8 malfunctioned on each occasion, repeatedly putting both planes into a nosedive from which the pilots could not recover. Today, the investigation team into last month's crash in Ethiopia said the pilots followed procedures issued by Boeing after the previous crash off Indonesia, but they were still not able to regain control of the plane.
The crew performed all the procedures repeatedly provided by the manufacturer, but was not able to control the aircraft.
And recommendations from the investigation clearly suggesting the plane's new automatic anti-stall mechanism did push the plane's nose repeatedly down.
Since repetitive uncommanded aircraft nose-down conditions are noticed in this preliminary investigation, it is recommended that the aircraft flight control system related to the flight controllability shall be reviewed by the manufacturer.
Draw your attention to this gauge here.
This simulator is what a 737 looks like before it was modified to create the MAX, the type of plane which crashed on both occasions. Captain Chris Brady, with 18 years of experience flying 737s, is showing us how the MAX's anti-stall system would work.
That's the stall warning to tell you the aircraft's about to stall.
He questions whether the new anti-stall mechanism was properly thought through by Boeing and US regulators at the FAA.
There needs to be a separate investigation into how Boeing and the FAA, between them, managed to certify an aircraft with such a catastrophic single point of failure.
Boeing faces lawsuits, multiple investigations and uncomfortable questions about how this aircraft was deemed safe to fly.
We were fairly confident that their recommendations from the first accident would have solved the second accident, if you like. But in this case, it's still completely open. They say that they'd followed the recommended procedures from Boeing, but the plane still crashed. So the Boeing position is actually very awkward at the moment.
Boeing will review today's report. It's already working to make the MAX safer, and it insists safety has always been its top priority. But the 737 MAX remains grounded worldwide, and the reputational damage is still playing out. Tom Burridge, BBC News.
Well, our business correspondent Theo Leggett is here. Awkward, it was described for Boeing, but how significant could this be?
It could be very significant. I think we have to remember at this stage these are the first findings of what could be a very long investigation, and details, frankly, are pretty sketchy at the moment. But what was said today, 2 things are worth bearing in mind. One, that the aircraft did indeed repeatedly effectively go into a nosedive. That's going to cast suspicion on a system that's carried on board these aircraft that Tom was talking about, an anti-stall system that's meant to lower the nose when the plane is at risk of stalling. It malfunctioned, or it's believed to have malfunctioned, in an accident involving a separate 737 MAX off Indonesia last year. It looks like the same thing may have happened again. The second point is quite key, that the pilots appear to have done everything that was asked of them. Now, in the wake of the first accident in Indonesia, Boeing put out a bulletin saying that if a problem emerged with this system, this is what pilots were supposed to do about it, that they could follow a set procedure that they should have been aware of, and that under those circumstances they should be able to get the aircraft back under control. If the pilots in this case followed that procedure and were still unable to get the aircraft back under control, then Boeing has questions to answer, because it effectively allowed an aircraft to continue flying 5 months after an accident. It said a particular procedure would sort out any problems. It would appear that's not the case.
So the potential of huge reputational as well as financial hit here.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's no question that Boeing is focused on safety. No manufacturer would set out to create a dangerous aircraft. The questions that are being asked are about whether commercial pressures encouraged the company to cut corners potentially, and whether American regulators may have been complicit in that as well. Now, we don't know this. This is what the investigation is all about, because investigations are about learning. But there is potential for Boeing also to face lawsuits. It has a lot of customers who are waiting for aircraft that currently cannot fly because of a safety review. So the 737 MAX has yet to be put back in the aircraft, in the air. So there are all these things that bring pressure to bear on the manufacturer.
This is the first report, as you say. This is from the Ethiopian government, but there are other reports which people will want to see.
Well, the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States has launched a far-ranging review into the safety certification of the 737 MAX. Now, the FAA itself certified this aircraft as safe. There have been a lot of accusations in the American press and elsewhere suggesting that there was too much common ground between Boeing and the FAA. Some of the safety work on this aircraft was contracted out to Boeing itself. In a way, you could say it was marking its own homework. Now, that's normal procedure. But the suggestion is that in this case, because of the rush to get the aircraft on the market quickly, and because the FAA had limited resources, maybe too much responsibility was given to Boeing, and that the FAA wasn't rigorous enough in its own analysis. So it's invited in other safety agencies from around the world to have their say on this, and to look at the safety certification, so that as and when this aircraft is flying again, they can be confident that it is actually safe to fly.
Theo, thank you very much. Theo Leggett.